I know what to do. Boy tells farmer after his horse won't move for 6 days. Robert Thompson was at the edge of despair. 6 days had passed since Thunder, his beloved horse and the finest animal on his ranch, simply lay down on the ground and refused to get up. That's when he felt a presence behind him. Turning around, he saw a thin boy he didn't quite recognize, wearing a worn-out cap and clothes too thin for the chilly morning. "Mr. Robert, I know what to do," said the boy with a confidence that contrasted with his fragile appearance. "Who are you, boy? How did you get in here?" Robert snapped impatiently. He wasn't in the mood for childish games. "I'm Tyler. I live on the neighboring property, the small one that borders yours. I've been watching your horse for a few days." Robert eyed the boy suspiciously. The neighboring property had been abandoned for years, ever since old Mr. Frank passed away. Who was this kid, and what was he doing there? "My grandfather taught me about horses before he left," Tyler continued, "and I know why Thunder doesn't want to get up. The vet's already been here 3 times. Dr. Michael is the best in the area and said there's nothing physically wrong with him. How would a kid like you know more than him?" Tyler slowly approached the fallen horse. Thunder lifted his head slightly, as if recognizing the boy. It was the first reaction the animal had shown in days. "He's not sick in his body, Mr. Robert. He's sick in his heart." "What nonsense. Horses don't have feelings." "Yes, they do, sir. And Thunder is suffering because he lost someone very important to him." A chill ran through Robert's stomach. There was no way this boy could know about Star. No one knew what had really happened to the mare. "Where's Star, Mr. Robert?" Tyler asked, as if reading his thoughts. The farmer took a step back. How did this boy know the mare's name? And how did he know she had disappeared? "Star ran off a week ago. I left the gate open by mistake and she got out. I've looked everywhere." Tyler held his gaze for a long moment. There was something in the boy's eyes that made Robert uneasy, as if he could see right through his lies. "Horses that live together for a long time form a very strong bond," Tyler explained, gently stroking Thunder's neck. "When one loses the other, they can fall into such deep sadness that they'd rather not go on living." "That's just childish talk. Horses don't die of sadness. He won't die, but he might stop wanting to live. It's different." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Robert watched as the horse responded to the boy's touch. Thunder closed his eyes and let out a deep sigh, something he hadn't done in days. It was as if he found some comfort in Tyler's presence. "Can I stay with him for a while?" the boy asked. "Just to talk. Sometimes they need someone who understands." "Talk? To a horse?" "My grandfather used to say animals understand much more than we think. We just have to know how to speak to them." Robert was about to send the boy away when he heard footsteps approaching. It was his wife, Nancy, coming from the main house with a less than friendly expression. "Robert, who is this child?" she asked, looking Tyler up and down with disapproval. "He says he knows how to help Thunder," Robert replied without much conviction. "That's ridiculous, letting some stray kid wander around here. Go away, boy. This is no place for you." Tyler stood up slowly, but kept his hand on the horse's neck. Thunder opened his eyes when he sensed the boy moving away. "Please, ma'am, I just want to help. I won't be any trouble. I don't want some strange kid hanging around my property. I already told him to leave." "Nancy, let the boy stay a while," Robert intervened. "If he can help..." "Help how?" "By doing witchcraft. I don't want that kind of thing here." Tyler looked at the couple, then at the horse, and sighed. He knew he wasn't welcome, but he couldn't just leave Thunder suffering like that. "I'll be back early tomorrow," he said to the horse, ignoring Nancy's furious expression. "Don't give up, buddy." As Tyler walked away, Thunder lifted his head slightly to follow him with his eyes. It was the first time in 6 days the animal had shown interest in anything. "Did you see that?" Robert said to his wife. "The horse reacted to the boy. Coincidence, and I don't want to see that kid here again. We've got enough problems without adding more trouble." Nancy went back inside, leaving Robert alone with his thoughts and Thunder. The rancher knelt beside the animal and ran his hand through its mane. "What happened to you, old boy?" he murmured. Why won't you tell me what's wrong? But deep down, Robert knew exactly what was wrong, and he knew he'd lied about Star's disappearance. The truth was far more complicated and shameful than he could admit. That night, Tyler couldn't sleep in the abandoned barn where he'd been staying. He thought about Thunder and the sadness he'd seen in the horse's eyes. He also remembered the words his grandfather used to repeat. Tyler, animals feel the same things we do. The difference is, they don't know how to lie about what they feel. His grandfather, Frank Miller, had been the wisest man he'd ever known. He'd worked with horses his whole life and taught his grandson everything about their behavior and emotions. When he passed 3 months ago, Tyler was left alone in the world, surviving on the little food left on the property and the occasional help of neighbors who barely knew he existed. The next morning, Tyler returned to the Reynolds Ranch before the sun had fully risen. He found Robert already awake, sitting in a chair beside Thunder with a cup of coffee in his hands. "Didn't sleep well?" the boy asked. "Haven't slept well in 6 days," Robert replied, surprised to see the boy so early. "My wife told you not to come back." "I know, but I can't leave Thunder like this. My grandpa used to say that when you have the gift to help, you can't turn your back." Tyler sat on the ground beside the horse and began speaking softly, almost whispering. Robert couldn't make out all the words, but there was something mesmerizing about the way the boy communicated with the animal. "What are you telling him?" he asked, curious. "I'm telling him about my grandpa, how he cared for horses with kindness, how he said every animal has a story to tell. We just have to know how to listen." Thunder shifted his head slightly toward Tyler, as if he were really paying attention. "And what's he telling you?" Tyler was silent for a few minutes, just watching the horse. Then he turned to Robert with a look too serious for a boy his age. "He's telling me about the sadness of losing someone he loved, about how hard it is to go on when the person, or the animal, who gave your life meaning, isn't there anymore." Robert's chest tightened. There was a pain in the boy's voice that went beyond concern for Thunder. "You lost someone important too, didn't you? My grandpa was everything to me. When he left, I didn't think I could keep going. But then I remembered. He taught me that you can't give up even when it hurts real bad." "And Thunder? Can he learn that too?" "He can. But first, he needs to understand what happened to Star. Animals don't do well with goodbyes without explanations." Robert looked away. With every word the boy spoke, he felt guiltier about the lie he had told. "Tyler," he began, but was interrupted by Nancy's arrival. "Didn't I say yesterday I didn't want to see you here?" she shouted, marching toward the boy. "Get out before I call someone to drag you away." "Nancy, please," Robert tried to intervene. "No, Robert. This boy is filling your head with crazy ideas. A sick horse goes to the vet. You don't just sit around wishing it better." Tyler stood up calmly, but before leaving, he turned to Robert. "Mr. Thompson, you know where Star is, and Thunder knows you know. That's why he can't accept it. Animals can sense when we lie to them." The boy's words hit Robert like a punch to the gut. How could a 12-year-old be so sure about something he thought he'd hidden so well? "What nonsense!" Nancy exclaimed. "Now get out and don't come back." Tyler waved at Thunder and walked away. But this time, the horse did something that surprised everyone. He tried to stand up. He couldn't manage it, but the effort was clear. "My God," Robert murmured. "He's trying to follow the boy." "Coincidence," Nancy insisted, though her voice sounded less certain. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. After Tyler left, Thunder became completely listless again. He refused the feed Robert offered and didn't even lift his head when the other ranch horses came near. "Nancy, I think the boy might be right," Robert said that afternoon. "Right about what?" "About Thunder suffering because of Star." "Star ran away, Robert. There's nothing to be done." "What if she didn't run away?" Nancy stopped folding the clothes she was hanging on the line and looked at her husband suspiciously. "What do you mean by that?" "Nothing. Just thinking out loud." But Robert wasn't just thinking. He was remembering 3 weeks ago, when William Carter, a horse trader from the neighboring town, had paid him a visit. William had been looking for a gentle, well-cared-for mare to sell to a family who wanted a calm horse for their children to learn to ride. At first, Robert had refused. Star wasn't for sale. But then William mentioned the price he was willing to pay, an amount that would solve the financial troubles Robert had been facing for months. The ranch was struggling. Last year's drought had ruined the pastures, cattle prices were low, and bills were piling up. Nancy didn't know the true state of their finances because Robert had hidden the severity of their problems from her. When William returned a week later, raising his offer even higher, Robert gave in. He sold Star without telling anyone, not even his wife. He planned to say the mare had run away and with time everyone would forget. He hadn't imagined Thunder would react this way. In his simple farmer's mind, horses were just work animals. He never suspected they could form such deep emotional bonds. Now seeing the pitiful state of his best horse, Robert began questioning everything, and the words of the orphan boy echoed in his mind. Animals can sense when we lie to them. That night, while Nancy slept, Robert went out to check on Thunder. The horse lay exactly as before on his side, eyes open but unfocused. "Forgive me, old friend," he whispered, stroking the animal's neck. "I made a terrible mistake." The next day, Tyler showed up again, even earlier this time. Nancy was still asleep when the boy approached the corral. "Has he been like this all night?" he asked. "Yes. He didn't even move to drink water." Tyler knelt beside Thunder and placed his hand on his chest. The horse opened his eyes and looked straight at the boy. "He's giving up," said Tyler, sadness in his voice. "His heart is beating too slow. What can we do?" "The truth, Mr. Thompson. Only the truth can heal the pain he's feeling." Robert took a deep breath. He knew the time had come to confess everything. "Tyler, I need to tell you something, but first answer me, how do you know so much about horses?" "My grandfather worked his whole life on a racehorse breeding ranch. He was what they called a horse healer. He said when an animal was sick at heart, only love and truth could heal them." "A horse healer? I've never heard of that." "It's ancient knowledge. My grandfather learned it from his grandfather, who learned it from his great-grandfather. These techniques have been passed down for generations, but few people believe in them nowadays. And do they work? They work when used with true love. My grandfather healed dozens of horses that vets had given up on." Robert looked at Thunder, then at Tyler. There was something about the boy that reminded him of someone, but he couldn't place it. "Tyler, what was your grandfather's full name?" "Frank Miller. Why do you ask?" Robert felt a chill. Frank Miller. Could it be the same Frank Miller he'd met over 20 years ago? "Was your grandfather tall, thin, with a gray mustache?" "Yes, did you know him?" "If it's who I'm thinking of, your grandfather saved my life once." Tyler stopped petting Thunder and stared at Robert. "How so?" "It was a long time ago. I was young, reckless. I was working on building a house when the roof collapsed. Your grandfather happened to be passing by and pulled me from the wreckage. If not for him, I would have—" Robert didn't finish the sentence, but Tyler understood. "He never told me that story." "That was Frank. He did good without expecting recognition. After he saved me, I offered payment, a reward, anything. He refused it all. Said it was just his duty as a human being." Tyler smiled for the first time since arriving at the ranch. "That sounds just like him. So you're the grandson of the man who saved my life. And I've been treating you poorly, sending you away when I should have been helping you." "You didn't know, Mr. Thompson, but now I do, and I'll do everything in my power to help you and Thunder." It was then that Nancy appeared on the porch, already dressed with an angry expression on her face. "Robert, is that boy here again?" "Nancy, I need to tell you some things. Come here, please." His wife approached reluctantly, clearly annoyed. "This is Tyler, Frank Miller's grandson." "So what? I don't know any Frank Miller." "You didn't, but I did, and I owe him my life." Robert told his wife about the accident 20 years ago and how Frank had been his savior. Nancy listened in silence, but her expression didn't soften. "That changes nothing," she said when Robert finished. "The boy can't keep wandering around here." "Nancy, the boy's an orphan. He's living alone on that abandoned property. We have an obligation to help. Obligation? Our obligation is to our own family. We have enough problems without adopting other people's children. Tyler listened to the argument quietly, still stroking Thunder. The horse had lifted his head slightly when he heard the raised voices. "Mrs. Nancy," the boy said softly, "I don't want to cause trouble. I just want to help Thunder get better." "And how do you plan to do that?" "With your magic tricks." "It's not magic. It's knowledge. My grandfather taught me that when an animal loses a companion, they go into deep mourning. If the companion was only injured or lost, the animal can recover when they reunite. But if the companion is gone forever, the animal must understand and accept the loss. And how is a horse supposed to understand something like that? Animals are smarter than we think. They feel, they grieve, they remember, and most of all, they know when we're lying." Nancy looked at her husband suspiciously. "Why does he keep talking about lying, Robert?" Robert took a deep breath. He knew he couldn't delay the truth any longer. "Because I lied, Nancy. Star didn't run away." "What do you mean she didn't run away? You said..." "I sold her. I sold her to William Carter 2 weeks ago." The silence that followed was heavy as a stone. Nancy stared at her husband as if she didn't recognize him. "You sold Star? Why?" "Because we needed the money. The ranch is going through hardships you can't even imagine. The bills are overdue, the bank is pressing, and I didn't know what else to do. And you didn't think you should talk to me before making a decision like that. I thought it would be easier if you believed she ran away. In time, you'd forget." "Easier? Robert, Star was with us for 15 years. She was like family." Tyler stood up slowly and looked at them both. "Now I understand why Thunder is like this. He knows Star didn't run away. Horses that live together know each other's scents, every sound. When one is taken away, the other feels it." "And what can we do now?" asked Robert, desperate. "That depends. Is Star still with William Carter?" "I don't know. He said he was selling her to a family in town. Then we have to find out where she is and bring her back." "Tyler, that might be impossible," said Robert. "And even if we find her, the new owners might not want to sell." "Then we try. My grandfather used to say that when you truly love something, you don't give up easily." Nancy listened to the conversation with growing concern. "Robert, even if we find Star, where will we get the money to buy her back? If you sold her out of necessity..." "I'll figure it out. I'll sell something else, borrow money, but I'll bring Star back." "And if you can't?" Tyler turned to Nancy with a grave expression. "Then Thunder will keep wasting away until he can't fight anymore." The boy's words fell like a sentence. Everyone looked at the horse lying there, growing weaker by the day. "All right," said Nancy with a sigh. "We'll try to find Star. But Tyler..." "Yes, ma'am?" "If we're doing this together, you can't keep living alone on that property. It's dangerous and it's not right." Tyler gave a shy smile. "Are you inviting me to stay here?" "I'm saying you can sleep in the guest room while we sort this out." Robert smiled at the change in his wife's demeanor. He'd known Nancy for 25 years and knew that beneath her tough exterior was a generous heart. "Thank you, Mrs. Nancy. I promise I'll help with whatever you need. First, we fix Thunder's problem. Then, we'll figure out the rest." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. That same afternoon, Robert called William Carter. The conversation was difficult and awkward. William confirmed he had sold Star to a family in Lexington, about 30 miles away. "The family's name is Reynolds," said William. "They bought the mare for their 8-year-old daughter, said they wanted a gentle, calm animal." "Do you have their address?" "I do. But Robert, can I ask why you want this information? Any problems with the mare?" "Not exactly. Well, I found out she was more important here at the ranch than I realized." "Oh, I see. Seller's remorse, huh? Happens a lot. But look, the Reynolds family was very happy with the purchase. I don't know if they'll want to undo the deal. I'll pay double what they paid." "Double? Robert, are you sure about that? Star isn't a purebred animal. She's not worth all that money." "She's worth it to me, William. Worth far more than money." William gave him the Reynolds family's address, but warned he couldn't guarantee anything. Robert wrote it all down and decided he'd leave for Lexington the next day. "I'll go with you," said Tyler. "No need, son. You'd better stay here and take care of Thunder." "Mr. Thompson, with all due respect, but I know horses better than you do. If we're going to convince the Reynolds family to give Star back, they'll want to understand why. And I know how to explain it the right way." Robert had to admit the boy was right. If anyone could explain the situation convincingly, it was Tyler. The next morning, before they left, Tyler spent a long time beside Thunder. The horse was visibly weaker, breathing heavily. "Hold on, buddy," Tyler whispered into the animal's ear. "We're going to get Star. You just have to hold on till we come back." The trip to Lexington was mostly silent. Robert drove lost in thought, while Tyler watched the countryside through the window. It was the first time in 3 months the boy had left the ranch's surroundings. "Tyler," Robert said as they neared town, "how did you manage 3 months alone after your grandfather passed?" "It wasn't easy. Some days I thought about giving up, but then I'd remember the things he taught me, and it felt like he was still with me in some way." "Why didn't you seek help? Social services? Relatives?" "I don't have any relatives left, and I was afraid they'd put me in an orphanage far from here. I didn't want to leave the place where I lived with my grandfather." "And now? How do you feel about staying at our ranch?" Tyler was quiet for a moment. "I feel like maybe this is what my grandfather would have wanted. He always said that when you help others, help comes back from where you least expect it." "Your grandfather was a wise man." "He was. And I think he'd be happy knowing I'm helping you take care of Thunder." They arrived at the Reynolds address late in the morning. It was a large, well-kept house in a residential neighborhood. Robert took a deep breath before ringing the bell. A friendly, well-dressed woman in her 40s answered. "Good morning, how can I help you?" "My name is Robert Thompson, and this is Tyler. We've come to talk about the mare you bought from William Carter 2 weeks ago." The woman's expression changed immediately. "Is there a problem with Willow?" "Willow? That's the name my daughter gave the mare. Why? Is she sick?" "No, ma'am. Actually, we've come to offer to buy her back." "Buy her back? But why?" Robert glanced at Tyler, who stepped forward. "Ma'am, may I explain? It's a very special situation." The woman invited them in and introduced herself as Nancy Reynolds. She called her husband David and their young daughter Emily. Willow, lived with a horse named Thunder for over 10 years, Tyler began. "They were like siblings. When she was taken away, Thunder fell into a deep sadness and hasn't eaten or drunk anything for 6 days." "What kind of story is this?" David asked. "Horses don't get sad." "Yes, they do, sir. Horses form very strong emotional bonds. When they lose a companion, they can fall into a depression that can even lead to the end." Emily, who had been listening quietly, moved closer to Tyler. "Willow is sad too," the little girl said. "She doesn't want to eat properly and keeps staring at the gate like she's waiting for someone." The adults looked at the child in surprise. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" asked Jennifer. "She cries, Mum. I hear her crying at night." Tyler knelt down to the girl's level. "Emily, you really like Willow, don't you?" "I do. She's very affectionate." "And you want her to be happy?" "Of course I do." "Then you understand that if she's sad, because she's far from her friend, we need to do something to help." The girl nodded, but her eyes filled with tears. "But if she goes back to her friend, I won't be able to play with her anymore." Tyler smiled tenderly. "Emily, what if you could visit Willow whenever you wanted, and meet Thunder too?" "Really?" Tyler glanced at Robert, who immediately understood the suggestion. "Of course," said Robert. "Our ranch is only 50 kilometers from here. You can come whenever you'd like. Emily can even learn to ride properly with both horses." Jennifer and David exchanged glances, clearly moved by the situation. "How much are you offering?" asked David. "Double what you paid," Robert replied immediately. "It's not about the money," said Jennifer. "We bought the mare for our daughter, and now we've found out another animal was suffering because of it." "Mum, I think Willow wants to go back to her friend," said Emily, surprising everyone. She told me. What do you mean she told you, sweetheart? The way animals tell things, with their eyes. Tyler smiled, recognizing in the girl the same sensitivity his grandfather had taught him to value. Emily is right, he said. Animals communicate far more than we realize, and if she's saying Willow wants to go back, it's because it's true. David let out a deep sigh. All right, you can take the mare back, but we don't want double the money, just what we paid. And I want to visit her every week, added Emily. It's a deal, said Robert, shaking David's hand. They went to fetch Star from the small stable behind the house. When the mare saw Tyler, she whinnied softly and approached immediately, as if she knew he brought news of Thunder. She really is sad, observed Jennifer. Look how her eyes lit up when she saw you. Animals never lie about how they feel, said Tyler, stroking Star's neck. That's why it's easy to tell when they're hurting. The trip back was completely different from the way there. Star traveled in a trailer borrowed from the Reynolds, but her whinnies could be heard now and then, as if she knew she was going home. Tyler, said Robert during the drive, how did you know Emily would understand the situation? Kids are like animals in some ways. They sense the truth more easily than adults, and Emily has a good heart. You could see it in her eyes. You have a wisdom that's uncommon for your age. My grandfather used to say wisdom isn't about age. It's about how much you're willing to learn and feel. When they arrived at the ranch, it was already late afternoon. Nancy was waiting anxiously at the gate. Did you get her? She asked as soon as Robert stopped the truck. We did, replied Tyler, hopping out of the cab. And look who couldn't wait to get home. Star stepped out of the trailer with a loud whinny, as if announcing her return, a sound that hadn't been heard on the ranch in 2 weeks. My goodness, how excited she is, Nancy remarked. It's because she smells thunder, Tyler explained. Let's take her to him slowly. The reunion has to be gentle. They walked toward the corral where Thunder lay in his usual spot. But when Star came into the horse's line of sight, something extraordinary happened. Thunder lifted his head completely for the first time in 6 days. His eyes, which had been dull and lifeless, shone with unmistakable recognition. And then, with an effort that surprised everyone, he tried to stand up. Easy there, buddy, said Tyler, approaching Thunder. You're weak, don't push yourself too hard. But Thunder was determined. On the 3rd try, he managed to stand, shaky but upright. Star immediately moved closer, pressing her muzzle against her companion's neck. Nancy began to cry. I've never seen anything like this in my life, she said, wiping her eyes. It's the power of true love, said Tyler. My grandfather used to say there's no greater force in the world than the sincere love between two beings who care for each other. Thunder and Star stayed pressed together for several minutes, as if sharing everything that had happened during their separation. It was such a touching scene that even Robert, a man accustomed to the harsh life on the ranch, felt his eyes grow moist. Tyler, said Robert, how can I ever thank you for this? No need to thank me, Mr. Robert. My grandfather always said that when you do good, good comes back to you. And you've already given me a place to stay and a family to care for me. Family? Asked Nancy. Aren't you my family? Isn't Mr. Robert my family? You took me in when I needed it most. Nancy stepped closer to the boy and, for the first time, hugged him. Of course we're your family, Tyler, and you're ours too. That night, for the first time in a week, Thunder ate all the feed offered to him. Star remained by his side the entire night, as if standing guard to protect him while he recovered. How will they be now? Asked Nancy as they watched the 2 horses through the kitchen window. They'll be fine, replied Tyler. Horses that reunite after a traumatic separation often grow even closer. It's like they value each other's company more. And you, Tyler? How will you be? Asked Robert. The boy looked at the couple who had become his new family. I'll be fine too. For the first time in 3 months, I'm sure I'll be okay. In the days that followed, Thunder's recovery was remarkable. Each day he grew stronger, more spirited, more like the vigorous horse he'd always been. Tyler began caring for both horses with the dedication and knowledge he'd learned from his grandfather. Nancy, who had initially resisted the boy's presence, now worried over him as if he were her own son. She prepared his favorite meals, mended his clothes, and even started making plans to enroll him in the town school. "Tyler needs an education," she told Robert one evening. "He's very bright. He can't just spend his life tending to horses." "You're right. Tomorrow we'll go to town to sort out the adoption paperwork and his school enrollment." Adoption? Tyler had overheard the conversation from the room where he was reading a veterinary book he'd found in Robert's library. "If you want to, of course," said Nancy. "We'd love for you to officially be our son." Tyler felt his eyes fill with tears. 3 months ago, when he lost his grandfather, he thought he was completely alone in the world. Now he had a family, a home, and a purpose. "I'd love that," he said, hugging them both. "My grandfather would be so happy knowing I found such good people." A week later, Emily Reynolds made her first visit to the ranch accompanied by her parents. The girl was delighted to see Thunder and Star together, clearly happy and healthy. "Willow is so much livelier now," she observed, stroking the mare. "Her name is Star again," said Tyler, "but you can still call her Willow too. She likes both names." "And Thunder? How is he?" "Look here." Tyler guided the girl closer to the horse, which lifted its head gently. "He's strong and happy again." Emily started visiting the ranch every weekend. Tyler became her riding instructor, teaching her with the same patience and kindness his grandfather had shown him. A month after the horses' reunion, an unexpected surprise arrived. William Carter showed up at the ranch with an unusual proposal. "Robert, the story of your horses reached my ears," he said. "And I also heard that Tyler here is the grandson of the famous Frank Miller." "Famous?" asked Tyler. "Son, your grandfather was known throughout the region as the best horse healer there ever was. Many people sought him out when they had problems with animals that veterinarians couldn't solve." "And what's your proposal, William?" asked Robert. "I'm setting up a new ranch specializing in horse rehabilitation. Animals that have suffered trauma, been mistreated, or have behavioral issues. I'd like to invite you to be my partners." "Partners?" Robert was stunned. "But we don't have money to invest." "You don't need money. You bring the knowledge and experience. I'll provide the capital." Tyler would be the lead healer, using the techniques he learned from his grandfather. Tyler looked at Robert and Nancy, waiting for their opinion. "It's an incredible opportunity," said Robert. "But the decision is yours, Tyler." "My grandfather always said our purpose in life is to help those in need," the boy replied. "If I can help more horses like I helped Thunder, then that's what I want to do." "Then it's settled," said William. "We'll start setting up the first horse hospital ranch in the region." 6 months later, Hope Ranch was in full swing. Tyler, now officially the son of Robert and Nancy Thompson, had become known throughout the area as the boy who talked to horses. Dozens of animals had passed through his care and returned to their families, healed not just physically, but emotionally. Tyler applied the ancient techniques he'd learned from his grandfather. Combined with modern veterinary knowledge, he studied eagerly. Thunder and Star became the ranch's therapy horses, helping other traumatized animals recover through the example of their own resilience. Emily kept visiting every weekend and had become the first official student of the riding school Tyler had created at the ranch. Other parents in the area began bringing their children to learn not just how to ride, but to understand and respect animals. Nancy, who had initially resisted Tyler's presence so much, was now his biggest advocate and supporter. She'd discovered that caring for the boy had filled a void in her life she hadn't even known existed. "You know, Tyler," she said one afternoon as they watched a rescued horse take its first steps after a 3-week treatment, "I think you came into our lives just when we needed it most." "How so, Mom?" Tyler had started calling her Mom naturally, and every time she heard it, Nancy was moved. "You saved Thunder, but you also saved us. Your father was carrying the guilt of having sold Star. I was carrying a bitterness I didn't even fully understand. And you taught us that any wound can be healed with love and truth. My grandfather used to say that when we open our hearts to help others, we always find that the ones who need help the most are ourselves." Robert, who had been listening, stepped closer to his adoptive son. "Tyler, do you have any idea how much your life has changed ours?" "How so, Dad?" "Besides everything your mother said, you gave us a purpose. Before, we were just working to survive. Now we work to make a difference in the lives of animals and people. And I learned that family isn't just those you're born with, added Tyler. Family is who chooses to stay together and care for one another. That evening during dinner, Robert made an announcement that surprised everyone. Your mother and I have decided something, Tyler. We want to officially establish Hope Ranch as a non-profit foundation. This means there will always be funds to care for animals in need, even when they don't have owners who can pay, explained Nancy. And it also means you'll be able to teach your techniques to others, so this knowledge won't be lost like it almost was when your grandfather passed away, Robert added. Tyler was too emotional to speak. He simply hugged his adoptive parents, feeling his grandfather would have been so proud of everything that had happened. 2 years later, Hope Ranch had become a national reference for horse rehabilitation. Tyler, now 15, had written a book about the emotional healing techniques for animals that he'd learned from his grandfather, preserving knowledge that had nearly disappeared. Thunder and Star, now almost 20, remained inseparable and healthy, living proof that true love can overcome any hardship. Emily, who had grown up on the ranch, had become an excellent rider and Tyler's main assistant in treating the horses. Her parents, David and Jennifer, had become close friends with the Thompson family, proving that sometimes the best friendships arise from the most unexpected situations. One Sunday morning, as Tyler watched Thunder and Star grazing peacefully together, Nancy approached him. "What are you thinking about, son?" "I was thinking about my grandfather, and how amazing it is that something that seemed terrible turned into the most beautiful thing that ever happened to me." "Do you miss him?" "I do. But it's not a sad kind of missing. It's a grateful one. Because everything he taught me lives on in me and in all the animals we help. He'd be proud of you. I know he would. And I also know he's happy because what he wanted most was for me to find a family to love, and who would love me too." Nancy hugged her son, watching the two horses who had been the starting point of this whole transformation. "You know, Tyler, sometimes I think Thunder and Star knew they had to go through that separation so you could find your way to us." "Maybe, Mom. My grandfather always said animals are wiser than we think." At that moment, Thunder lifted his head and looked straight at Tyler, as if he knew they were talking about him. Then he did something that had become his signature gesture. He let out a soft whinny as if saying, "Thank you." Tyler smiled and waved at the horse. "You're welcome, my friend. Thank you for teaching me that we should never give up on those we love." And so, on a ranch in rural America, an orphaned boy, a once closed-hearted family, and two horses in love discovered that true love has the power to heal any wound and unite any heart, willing to open itself to hope. The most important lesson Tyler learned, and taught everyone around him, was that sometimes we must lose everything to discover what truly matters. And when we open our hearts to help others, we find that we ourselves receive the greatest help of all. Years passed, and the story of Tyler, Thunder, and Star spread across the country, inspiring others to open their homes and hearts to animals and children in need. But for Tyler, the most important thing wasn't fame or recognition. It was the certainty that he had found his place in the world and his purpose in life. And every night before going to sleep, he would look out the window at the corral where Thunder and Star rested together, silently thanking his grandfather for teaching him that love is the most powerful force in the universe, capable of healing any pain and uniting any heart. The end of the story. So, dear viewer, what did you think of this touching story? Did you manage to hold back the tears when Thunder finally got up to reunite with his beloved Star? Tell us in the comments which moment moved you the most, and whether you also believe in the power of love between animals. Your opinion means so much to us. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories.